All right. Good evening, Corona Daze Professional Development Group. It's me, Danette Edwards, the founder of Corona Daze Professional Development Group. I'm here this evening with Bridget Baggett, and this is her encore presentation with us. Tonight, she's going to talk about the likability factor. They just don't like you. Learn the answers to the infamous question, is it better to be liked or respected? Discover how your likability factor is impacting your career or job search. Learn ways to increase your likability factor within your network and potential employers. So that's what Bridget is going to talk to us tonight about. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bridget. She's the founder of Twisted Career, is a career strategist and a diversity advocate that assists professionals with their professional journey, with their career journey. She helps career-oriented professionals navigate the competitive workforce by setting obtainable career goals that lead to gainful employment, promotions, salary increases, and meaningful career changes. You guys know me. I'm going to turn it over to Bridget. She can add anything she'd like. I didn't ask, Bridget, do you want your questions throughout or after? You want a dedicated Q&A?
We can do a dedicated Q&A afterwards. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys, you heard it straight from Bridget. So we're going to do a dedicated Q&A. So send me those questions, and I will share them with Bridget in the chat. Stormy's harassing me. I'm going to stop my camera, mute myself, and turn it over to you now, Bridget. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I know again, I started my 8 o'clock, so evening is my thing. So I'm so happy everyone took time on a Sunday to come out and spend time with learning about the likability factor. So we're going to cover some information. I do have a couple more slides than last time, so we can have a little deeper dive in the likability factor, define what it is and how it impacts not only your career search, but your personal and your professional life overall. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to share my screen so everyone be able to see that. I am going to share this screen and let me I'm going to make this slideshow so everyone can see it. Okay, so again, this is the title page, the likability factor. I always like to start with the about me page. Even though I did go over or my bio was announced, I do like to give a little bit more personal background. I use a word cloud, pretty much straightforward and short. It's of my various jobs that I've had throughout my entire career. I think it's important to showcase some of the things that I've had in my past, as far as professionally, how I was able to pivot to different careers and how I can make it relatable for those that may see a position on here that they may have had or currently have, and see that is ways to be able to navigate through your career search. So I do like to present my about me page. So if opportunity doesn't knock, you can always build a door. The purpose, I also like to start with this slide, which is knowing your purpose. In my last presentation, I used this as well. The meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. I think that knowing your why in everything that you pursue, you can pursue with purpose. So when you're able to identify your why, you're able to identify your actions and your behaviors, in some cases, the lack thereof, and be able to explore what needs to be done to either identify your why or to pursue your why. So as we go through the slides and go through the presentation, make sure that you have your why or your purpose somewhere in the back of your mind, and make sure you can find a way to connect the dots on how you can pivot through whatever obstacle or challenge you may be facing now, and how that circles back to your why. So let's start with the definition of the likability factor. So what is the likability factor? It's a factor in which people make choices or decisions that favor you. It's based on past or present positive interactions or perceptions of one's personality traits. So I highlighted interactions and perceptions for a reason. So interactions can be a brief first time introduction. It can be that 30 second elevator speech. It could be something very brief, or it can either be working with a colleague that you may have had on your team for a number of years. So interactions can be defined in various ways. Perceptions is a different story. People can use their intuition, or people can base how they view you or their perception on other people's views or interactions. What do I mean by that? Some people may take the perceptions of others, other labels people give you, and use that to create their own without actually having a physical interaction with you. So let's just say that you're new to a position or new to a job. And someone just casually says, you know, Teresa is a superstar or Jacob's a tech whiz. You've already started to create some type of perception of this person without even meeting them, just based off of what someone else said about them. Also can have a negative connotation as well. Statements could be say, well, let's go ahead and get this meeting started because Molly is always late. You know, you've already connected in your mind. Well, I don't know Molly, never met Molly, but seems like she's always late. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting because that's what the supervisor has labeled her. So you also have to be aware that your likability factor can also be weighed by interactions or perceptions that you may not actually have had with a person, but just off of other people's views that they may have had of you. So we want to also make sure that's clear as well. So what are some traits of likable people? If you Google likability traits, you're going to get, 10 pages of what are some traits people like about other people. I kind of highlighted some of the ones that stood out to me and some of the ones that I could identify in people that I like active listeners, being able to talk to someone, making eye contact, and they're actually genuinely listening to me versus someone that as I'm talking to them, they're on their phone, they're on the computer, you can hear typing in the background, things like that. Punctuality, that's a big one for me. When people aren't respectful of your time. So if someone's habitually late and not punctual, that's going to decrease your likability. And the thing is, it may not directly be seen through their behavior or interactions with you. It may be something as casual as the comment I made about Molly. Oh, she's late. We're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting, which means that Molly's going to miss out on some genuine announcements. She's going to miss out on some instructions or directions that supervisor may give because she's already labeled her, as a person that's late. And that also declined her likability. And in a way, it also persuade other people on the team to look at her as, oh, well, she's late. Let's keep it moving. Good memory, I thought, was a good one. People that can remember your name. I've remember a person that remembered my name that I met years ago, and they still were able to put a face with a name. I don't even remember what they said throughout the conversation, but it took me back that they even remembered my name. So I see people that have these likability traits. They also have good memories with being able to either identify people by name, or they have some type of technique in which they put faces with a name so they can be able to remember them. Being selfless. Having empathy, smiling and laughing, being an all-around happy person, someone that takes accountability for their actions. So being able to apologize in general, having healthy boundaries. A lot of people confuse likability with a people pleaser. They're not the same. So please do not think that you have to be a people pleaser, or a person that is a people pleaser does not have healthy boundaries. They're willing to say no to themselves so they can say yes to someone else. So don't confuse the two, because most of the time people pleasers may be liked in the beginning because the person's getting something out of it. But in the long term, they aren't looked at as someone that could lead or be respected because people can just run all over them. So it's a different type of equation once you start looking at longevity. Someone with healthy boundaries can say no, but also can offer to be helpful in other ways. So that's something that you want to be able to have healthy boundaries. Non-judgmental. These are the ones that are going to be able to look at you without judging your background, your education, and be able to look at the total person versus basing other stereotype or other type of attachments to that. So Likability traits for someone that's respectful, and they like to celebrate. They celebrate their accomplishments, and they also look to learn from their failures. So these are some of the general traits I saw about likability people that I've just seen in people that I like. But again, there are others as well that are highlighted if you wanted to look it up as well. But those were some of the main ones I wanted to point or bring to your attention. There's also been cases where, well, is likability something that you can learn, or is it something that's natural? Nurture versus nature is the big topic about likability traits. I think there's a blend of both. It's some things that you can learn to be liked, and it's some things that you either have it or you don't. The natural way or natural traits, as far as like empathy, authenticity, bonding, those are things that are pretty much developed through a person's childhood or upbringing. It's impacted by their experiences that they had in life. And after a certain age, you know, these type of natural traits, or I would identify it as natural traits, would be pretty much coded. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I know that after a certain point in time, if you haven't developed empathy, if you haven't learned how to bond and connect with people, if you haven't learned some type of foundation of authenticity, that's something that a person as they get older cannot really learn. I can't teach someone to feel sorry or feel grief. These are things that, you know, are impacted by how you were brought up in your development. Either way, there are many psychological disorders that I won't go into that are displayed when these foundational components aren't developed. And I'm pretty sure people have known people that, you know, that have these flaws, and this is not developed in that area. Learned behavior is something like emotional intelligence, honesty, being consistent, punctual, helpful. These are things that you can learn, that you can be able to be more consistent, or learn to be able to be more punctual and be on time for things and be helpful. One thing that I do tell people is that when you have these learned behaviors, they fall in the category of being like socially appropriate behavior and responses to things. These are things that are learned over time as well. An example can be like, you know, getting drunk at a Christmas party, kind of know right from wrong, you know, or pulling your weight on a project, you know, even though you're going to get credit for it anyway. Again, emotional intelligence kicks in. When I know I'm going to get credit for it, do I help out, or do I kind of slack off and let everyone else carry the weight? You know, showing up on time, as I said. Even something that's like dating a coworker. You know, even though you may not have a policy in place that prohibits it, emotional intelligence kicks in. Is this something that you really want to do? So again, these are behaviors that can be learned over time. These are behaviors that people can improve on, that can also impact your likability factor. Perception versus reality. So this was a case study that was actually done at UCLA. They actually rated over 500 adjectives based on their perceived significance to likability. So they were given a list of adjectives to have people pick out, you know, what are these adjectives that you think are mostly aligned with being liked. The top rated adjectives had nothing to do with being gargantuous, intelligent, or attractive. Innate characteristics. So a lot of these characteristics are adjectives that were used were like sincerity, transparency, and capacity for understanding another person. Again, that goes back to empathy. So a lot of times people in their mind, they think that, well, I have to look a certain way, or I have to be this social butterfly in order to be liked. And you actually don't. It says a lot of people don't rate people on how social you are. A lot of people look at, okay, how sincere and genuine is this person? You know, is this person someone that I can count on? Are they dependable? Are they consistent? Are they transparent? Are they honest? These are a lot of the characteristics from this study that really rate your likability. So likability always wins. So if you can take a look at this graph, and I made sure I cited and gave the dual rights to the person that actually developed this graph. Her name is Karen McGrain, and I adapted this from Bridget.com. But as I was reading through different things, I thought this was an awesome illustration of how to display likability as it relates to employment. You can also relate this to entrepreneurship as well. This graph actually represents 4 type of personas. As you can see, the boxes are filled with somebody that's, competent, they're highly competent, but they're a jerk. Then you have someone that's incompetent and they're a jerk. Then you have someone that's highly competent, but also highly likable. They're labeled that rock star. Then you have somebody that not so competent, but they're liked. They call them a lovable fool. So if you can do in the chat box, what person are out of these 4 selections, who do you think is the most damaging person in the organization? I can't see the results, but I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to type that in there. The most damaging person, if you had to hire one out of 4 of these people to be on your team, either the competent jerk, the rock star, the incompetent jerk, or the lovable fool, who do you think would cause the most damage for your team? And if you said the competent jerk, you're absolutely right. Some people thought it was the incompetent jerk. No, we know those people don't know what they're doing. They can be ignored. We go about our business. We've all had an incompetent jerk that we had to work with. They don't know what they're doing. They're rude. They're disrespectful. You're just waiting for them to get fired. The people that cause the most damage is the person that's very competent, but also a jerk. The reason why is that this person limits the ability for the organization to grow. They stifle the cultural engagement. They have a bad attitude. They don't collaborate well with others. And they all around bring the morale down in the organization. So it's different when you have someone that doesn't know what they're doing, but also not competent. It's different when you have someone that does know what they're doing, but also are unpleasant to work with. They cause the most damage because at the end of the day, they know what they're doing. In some ways, you may have to work with the person that knows what they're doing. But then it can also bring your mood down and bring the organization down with it. So that is the most the most damaging person to the organization. So on the flip side, and this answer will also amaze you, who do you think is the most valuable person on the team or in the organization? Who do you think would be the most valuable? We already identified the competent jerk as the most damaging. Who do you think would be the most valuable? If you said lovable fool, I know that kind of caught me off guard too. I'm like, why not the rock star? The lovable fool may not be competent, but they are the person that is the social glue to the organization. This lovable fool is the one that keeps the organization together. They may not know what they're doing, but they know how to socialize ideas. They know how to communicate. Many cases, they know how to may know how to do transformation within an organization, which means is they can get people to buy into an idea. The idea may not be theirs because again, they're incompetent, but they know how to bring people together and bring people to buy into an idea, even if the idea is not their own. So that's one thing that they said the most valuable person on the team would be the lovable fool, because they're the ones that keep the organization running smoothly. So that's my take on that, but we're going to look at this graph again. So if you look at this now about getting the interview, the competent jerk gets interviews, the rock stars gets interviews, and the lovable fool gets interviews. Competency gets your foot in the door. Competency will get you the interview in many cases, but I truly believe that likability gets you the offer. You have to be able to manage to balance the two. There are a lot of people that are less qualified They get the opportunity because they are liked. And I've seen it all the time. A person that has less education, that has less experience, that has less skills, are able to outperform in interviews with people that may be 100% competent and maybe running circles around them in experience. But because that lovable fool, in this case on this graph, gets the interview, look at the next slide, many times they land the job. There's a scenario where a lot of competent or a lot of lovable fools land the job as well as the competent jerks. We all want to be in the place where you land the job as the rock star. But if you look at the wave, and I think this wave is also a little bit deeper, there are a lot of people on both sides of the fence, whether they're competent and really not likable, and whether they're competent or incompetent but are lovable, they all get the opportunity to get their foot in the door. So again, there are a lot of lovable fools that are landing jobs that don't qualify or even competent in doing. But if you're liked, and depending on the company culture and the significance of the job or how the job would impact the company's bottom line, there's a lot of companies that are willing to trade. They're willing to trade likability over competence. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to balance both. So you have a people that come in with the matter of fact attitude that can land the interview, but never get the offer. So you want to always check your likability, even when you're communicating with your first interview and maybe even your phone screening, and see how you're able to connect with that interviewer or with that manager or with that recruiter. The likability factor, and again, I said this before, food for thought. Competence gets you a foot in the door. Likability gets you a seat at the table. So that's a quote that I really like. And I kind of added my little seat at the table at the end of that. But I really, truly believe that if you're competent, you definitely can get your foot in the door, but your likability will get you a seat at the table. So how does your likability impact different outcomes in your life? And we're going to look at this as a business point of view, but you can also relate this to personal point of view as well. Your likability in general impacts your access to information. This can be your upcoming events. This can be meetings. This can be friends' parties. This can be get-togethers. This can be anything that will give you an edge to something. So an example could be, are you the last to know or the first to know if something has changed? You know, why didn't someone reach out to you about a time change or about a meeting change or about a venue being moved? So these are questions that you ask yourself, especially when you're working on the team. It's always that one person where I didn't know. I didn't get the email. No one reached out to me. Got to ask yourself why. Opportunities. Which departments are hiring? You know, what opportunities are inside some of your close networks? Are you just the person in the company that people go to for gossip? But are you the person in the company that people are actually going to for opportunities or to tell you about opportunities? So don't get, being popular versus actually being liked. Because a lot of people think, well, oh, this person is the social butterfly of the office and they always have the tea on things. But are people actually going to this person telling them about, hey, our department's hiring for XYZ? Or, hey, give me your resume so I can take it up to the hiring manager. Those are the actual opportunities that count. Introductions. People are excited to introduce likable people to other likable people. So again, are people hesitant to make introductions for you? Are people hesitant to kind of introduce you to their network or even speak of their network in front of you in fear of you asking them to be introduced to someone? That's also a cue to let you know, is this person being just distant with their contact or network, or is this the type of person that doesn't trust me to introduce me to their contacts or network? Recommendations. We recommend people that we like, we trust, and we know. We have people, and I'm pretty sure everybody can account if they have someone that they know, they may have worked with, that they would never recommend, and this is just actual facts. Like, is it someone that that you can think of as a friend or as even a family member, or someone that you may know that you're like, yeah, I know them, they're cool and all, but I'm not putting my name on any recommendation, because their work ethic, their personality, that they can't collaborate, that they can't work well with others, and you don't want your name associated with it. I understand. That's the same thing with recommendations. So there's a lot of people that you may work with, or they may come off as someone that's, keeping up a cordial behavior due to the work environment, but do they genuinely like you enough to recommend you? Awards and recognitions. I actually have a story about this as well. People that are most competent still can be overlooked for awards and recognition. And the story I have about this is, actually, we called her the cookie lady. And this was long time ago, probably one of second or third job that I worked on, and was a lady that used to come in and on people's birthdays on our team. So we probably were a team of 12 or 15. So it wasn't like a whole department. It was a small team. But on their birthday, she would bring in cookies. And they weren't homemade. It wasn't like she was at home, rolling out dough or anything like that. I'm pretty sure she probably stopped at the closest grocery store, and on her way to work, she would bring them in. But it was the thought that she would do that for every single person's birthday on the team. And we used to call her the cookie lady. She was not a top performer. She was not the most competent person on the team. But during our annual banquet, and I think it was our annual reception, she got recognized. I can't remember the award that they that they created. It wasn't a standard reward that they give on an annual basis, but they created an award for her just to celebrate that, hey, this person, we like her. She brings in cookies for people on her birthday. She doesn't have to, and she, even though she wasn't a top producer, she was always on time. She showed up. She helped people when they needed to be helped. And I say that to say there were people on our team that outperformed her, that were more competent than her. They didn't create a reward for them. They weren't even recognized at the reception. And I say that to say that being liked is important, and I remember to this day, even though it was years ago, that she got that award. And I mean, you couldn't tell her anything. And she was so appreciative of that. So that's one thing that you have to think about as well. I created a likability formula. And again, this is just the ambiguous formula or equation that I put together, and I developed it kind of like unique for me. So it's not something that you can go out and try to find online or anything like that. I wanted to put together something that I thought the top 3 essential traits versus, or divided by what I think that regardless of the traits, what do you have to have? And that was trust. So I thought that in my mind, how do you quantify something that's not, most people couldn't quantify, so there were several ways that people define likability out there. A lot of people weren't able to quantify its effectiveness. So I kind of put together this equation that identified that. So authenticity, selflessness, and empathy. I think those were the top 3 that I saw. If I looked at all those traits and I had to put together the top 3, those were the top 3 I thought of. Like, you have to be authentic, you have to be selfless, and you have to have empathy. And what I mean by that is, when people are doing something for something. That's where the selflessness comes in. There are a lot of people in this business, in some cases, a lot of people do things because they want something out of it. Authenticity is, you have to be genuine. So even if you're selflessness, or even if you are doing something to get something, authenticity has to kick in some way. You have to be genuine about it. And you have to have empathy. You have to be able to relate, connect, put yourself in someone else's shoes. And all this doesn't matter if you don't have trust. And what I mean by that is, I gave an example and I wrote an example down. Example would be, if someone heard about your situation, They displayed empathy and said, oh my God, you're out of work. Then they became selfless and said, you know what? I'm going to write you $1,000 check. And then they were very authentic about it. You know, they gave you a check that's, you know, I really want to help you out. I'm true. I'm genuine about this. You wouldn't trust it. I know I wouldn't. If some stranger just handed me $1,000 check, I'd be like, what's the catch? You know, so I think trust has to be in it. If anything, I'm not going to automatically like the person because someone handed me $1,000 check. If anything, suspicion would kick in first. So I think that trust has to be a factor in there. You have to trust the person that's showing you their likability factor in one way or another. If not, it comes off as ingenuine. In some cases, it can come off as suspicious. It's almost like I said, it can almost come off like, what's the catch? What do you want? So you definitely want to make sure that you're doing that when you are offering help or trying to impact someone. So how do you increase your likability? I know this was a question that was on the flyer as well. I wanted to address was how do you actually increase it? You first want to identify your likability factor by taking a self-assessment. How do you do that? So it's different ways you can do it. I know there's probably hundreds of quizzes on there for you to take, but it genuinely comes down to you actually having an honest look at your behavior and an honest look at the reactions and the behaviors around you. So you could really take a good self-assessment by reflecting on your last couple of interactions that you've had with people, whether it's friends, whether it's coworkers, whether it's your boss, whether it's acquaintances. And you want to also refer back to the slide that I had, impact of your likability, the impact of your likability slide. And you have to ask yourself, are you being limited any type of information or access? Would any of the people in your circle actually recommend you for something, whether it's a job, whether it's you know, a new apartment or house or whatever? Would they give you some type of recommendation? Would they introduce you to someone or to their network? You know, so these are questions that you ask yourself to kind of gauge your likability within your internal circle. Are you somehow lightheartedly labeled anything? Positive or negative, which means, like I made examples in the previous slide, are you labeled as the go-getter or the superstar? Or are you labeled as the person that's chronically late? You know, or, oh, let's get started, they're going to be late anyway. These are things that you have to pay attention to, because this is also the perception that other people are going to perceive off of how others label you. And that can also decrease your likability with people that you never met. They just heard about you. So you want to be able to take that internal self-assessment with yourself. You also want to get insight. You can ask someone close to you actually what they think, or give them their best qualities of you. But you also want to ask them what are some things or the weaknesses or things you need to work on. This is not the yes friend. So don't ask one of your friends that no matter, they're always going to say you're the moon and the stars. You want to ask someone that's going to be able to give you a genuine feedback and be somewhat objective. This is a great time, if with that, I know we're coming up in November, December, if you're currently working or if you've worked in the past, to pull out some of your performance reviews if you have access to them. If you have a performance review coming up, legitimately ask your boss, your manager or your supervisor, ask them what they think. What are some things you need to work on? What efforts need to be made to take you from here to there? So get genuine insight back on not only your behavior, but the overall view of you as not only as a worker, but as a person. Make internal improvement. So with this, what are some things that you can work on? Again, once you get insight back, or once you take that self-assessment with yourself, you want to really make internal improvements on what can you change about yourself that you think will increase your likability. So if you know you're a person that chronically is late, what can you do to increase your punctuality? If you're a person that, you know, doesn't really give full attention to people, what can you do to be an active listener? Or you're a person that really doesn't try to help out, you're kind of like, well, I got my work to do, I don't have time to help anyone else. What can you do to lend a hand for someone that is working on something that's in your expertise? And also, you want to set healthy boundaries. You don't want to be the people pleaser that you're trying to help everybody and anybody. You want to be able to say no, but also offer help in areas that you can help. So you want to make some internal improvements as well. And at the end of the day, none of this matters if you're not consistent. So that was my last thing I wanted to say on the Increase Your Likability is, how are you going to be able to set this in stone and be able to do this on a consistent basis? The worst thing that I've seen people do over and over again, they don't make a habit of reaching out until they need something. I see it in person. I see it on LinkedIn. I see it everywhere. So if you don't make a habit of being consistent and just reaching out just to reach out, hey, you're a connection. I'm just reaching out to see how you're doing. How are you faring the pandemic? How's everything going on your job? Being able to actually reach out and genuinely care, at least with someone that you may have worked with before, or someone that you worked on your team, or may even be past coworkers. Don't make it a habit to only reach out when you want something. You can even offer to help in an area. If you see that, hey, you got a new job, reach out if you ever need anything. Hey, I've worked on this project before. How can I help you? So you want to make sure that it's something that you can do, but you also want to make sure it's genuine as well. Likability really does come easy for those that actually do want to help and actually do want to reach out and see how someone is doing. Again, a lot of people can sense if you're reaching out because you want something. You want to make sure if you're consistent with it, they won't think twice about it. That's why consistency definitely matters. And the infamous question everybody asked, is it better to be liked or respected? And I am answering that. I feel it's better to be liked. My details or my explanation for that is, I never met a person that I like but did not respect. I have several people that I respect but may not necessarily like. So if you can think about people in your life or any type of situations that you may, there may be people that you can respect, and I'll say there has been people that I can respect them based on their position, based on their title, based on their authority. But I wouldn't give them access to my time. I wouldn't give them access to my network or my resources. So people that I genuinely like, I tend to respect. So my answer to that question is it better to be liked or respected? I would rather be liked. Or I think that would be an appropriate answer for me. The Likeability Factor resources. These are 3 books if you guys want to check out that I think are also good for people to explore. The Likeability Factor is actually a book by Tim Sanders. A oldie but goodie is How to Win Friends and Influence People, and then also The Laws of Likeability. My quote that I will leave you with is, you will get further in life being liked than just being qualified. So that is a quote that I do want to leave everyone tonight. So I am going to open everything up to questions, and let me go ahead and unshare my screen.
Okay. We're still sharing, but it's okay. All right. So
There we go.
thank you, Bridget.
No problem.
I'm like, thank you. All right. So I have a couple questions. How can I check my likability during the interview?
How can you check your likability during the interview? You can check it indirectly without having to ask, just by the engagement that the interviewer gives you. Are they asking you questions that are going to get you closer to the job, like asking you about your qualifications, asking about a particular project that you worked on? A lot of times you just have to use your intuition. You can tell if someone is kind of, oh man, let me hurry up and get this interview over. And they're kind of blowing it over. They're not asking questions. They're very indirect. And they're just trying to get through the standard questions and get you off the phone. And I've had interviews that were scheduled for 30 minutes and we've gone into an hour. That right there was the indicator that, okay, this person really is considering me for this position, and they're asking more and more questions, and they're telling me about the next steps, and they're telling me about different things that I need to do to prepare for the next steps. They're telling me who I'll be interviewing with next. So these are some of the things that you can actually, signs that you can actually pick up on without having to directly ask the person, hey, how do you feel about me? They'll be able to indirectly tell you just through their interaction throughout their interview.
What about laughter during the interview? What if my interviewer is laughing with me? What is that? Is that a good sign?
That is a good sign. And hopefully, if you can, before the interview, get some background information on the person that is interviewing you, whether that's going through LinkedIn, looking for some type of commonality that you can either bring up in the interview, whether it's the alumni or alma mater that you may graduate. I've seen people that end up going to the same schools, that they'll bring that up. If it's a certain team that they may like, anything that can break the ice, I think is very good. So being able to kind of do your due diligence before the interview can also increase your likability factor, because you can come to the table with some common ground to kind of use the leverage in the interview itself.
Okay, all right. Let me just mute this. I'm um going to the live, but it won't let me mute it. Let me turn it down. All right. So what about can I improve my likability if my self assessment is bad or low at my current job? Or is it too late there, and should I just focus on my likability at my new place of employment?
Um, it's hard, as it what it says. It's hard to unring a bell.
Mm.
I say that. And what I mean by that is, once you've gone into an organization and you have been labeled a particular label over, and I don't know how long you've been at your organization, but if you've been at your organization for a supplemental amount of time, it's going to be very hard to change people's views of you, especially say if you were someone that was habitually late, or you were someone that was caught up in some type of gossip, or that's always going to be, unfortunately, as human nature, is going to be associated with you, unless the people either leave the department, they quit, and you get new people that can form their own perception of you. Your best bet was to continue to transform yourself while you're there, which means that you don't have to continue to live out the stereotype or live out the label that they've given you, but you can use that as practicing. So when you move to your new position or new job altogether, you've already practiced being able to be likable and being able to put in some of these likability traits within your first weeks or months of work. And a lot of people don't understand, people form their perception of you within the first day of meeting you, your first day on the job. They're already forming their, and they may be wrong, but it's your job to either live up to them or not, because somebody may come in the door and already have this preconceived notion that this person is going to be like that. But if you are, like somebody, oh, this person's gonna be late all the time, and you live up to it, they're gonna be like, my intuition was right. So you want to be able to, even though people may have their own conceptions or preconceived notions of you, you want to be able to either walk in that door and live up to what you want to be perceived as, and have that follow, versus living up to what other people already think of you.
All right, thank you. What
Mm-hmm.
about how does race or gender, how could those things play into this?
It definitely can play into it. There's different type of stereotypes that are associated with different type of races and different type of genders. I'm pretty sure that a lot of them are already well known to a lot of people. Lateness and tardiness is being one. Unprofessionalism may be another one. And again, people may already have these preconceived notions with you walking the door and without you even saying a word. How you're able to dispel any of those is being able to live to your true self. And again, that goes back to being authentic, having the authenticity to live genuinely and work genuinely through you. So anything they may think of you, and they may keep on to that thought process until you show them different and show them that, hey, I am professional, I am on time, I am being able to live up to this title that I was hired in to be. All that will go away eventually. So and a lot of times it's mental. No one really expresses it, and and only time they will actually verbally say something if you give them a reason to. And again, like I said about my example I gave about, I just made up a name about Molly being late. Oh, Molly's late for the meeting, we're going to go ahead and get started. That's something that evidently Molly has lived up to that label, for someone to call her out about that.
Wow.
So as long as you're not living up to it, most people won't even mention it.
Okay. All right. And what about do I have to socialize with my coworkers in order for them to like me? Can people like me if I just come and do my job?
Yes, people would like if you come and do your job. One thing that I said, it doesn't have to do with you being a social butterfly. People like people that they can connect with, and people like people that they can see that can be helpful or a resource. So even though you may not come in and be the social butterfly or the center of attention, you may come in and actually ask a person that may be working on the same project as you if you can help with something, or if you can give them insight or resources for something. If even sending an email to a coworker that may be struggling with something, and say, hey, I know how to do Excel, I can help you with those spreadsheets. They're going to remember that, so they're going to remember the next time an opportunity comes up, or the next time they need someone to lead a project. Oh, I'm going to remember XYZ because she helped me out on this project. So it doesn't have anything to do with being the center of attention or being that social butterfly, but it does have to do with making a connection.
Okay, making a connection. All right. I don't have any more questions in the chat, guys. If you have anything, please drop them. Drop anything else that you may have. So I won't ask the marginalization question because you've presented before. But I do have the same two questions, but they're a little different. So if you go back to a younger professional, Bridget, what would you want her to know about the likability factor?
I would like her to know to make genuine connections and be consistent. I think that's really key. And consistent is the big part, because you want to follow up. And I actually had brought up, I don't even know if I have it out here right now, or did I bring it? I actually wanted to show you guys a card. Yes. When I mean be consistent, I have a card from a coworker that I worked with back in Florida that still to this day sends me cards once a year. We're not talking about every week or anything, but once a year I still get cards from a coworker that I worked with, I want to say almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we still connect on LinkedIn. We may chat once or twice. At this time, this person's moved on, married, has kids, and has a family. But it's the fact that, I was fresh out of school. She was fresh out of school. We connected. And to this day, we still communicate with each other. So I think if I had more of those relationships, if I, was more, at that young age, being able to say consistency is the key, and actually was more consistent with cultivating relationships, it definitely increased your likability.
I like that. I like that. All right, guys. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going ahead with my final question. And my final question is, if we have one takeaway from tonight, what would you want that to be?
That last quote that I actually said, and I'm going to go back to it, is one thing that you can take away from the likability factor: if you would get further in life being liked than just being qualified.
Get further in life than just being qualified. Perfect. So, guys, I don't have anything else from you all. So I'm going to say thank you, Bridget, for coming back. I know you're
Thank
coming back once
you.
again. Can you tell us about the next topic?
Next topic would be mangled mindset. So this is being able to get a laser focus not only on your job search but in your goals in general.
All
So
right,
I think
perfect.
that's coming up the middle of November.
All right, all right. Well, I can't wait to host you again. That'll be a
Yeah,
different time, right? I think that's a different time slot.
it may be.
I think
Yeah.
it's a different time slot, guys. All right, well, perfect. Thank you again for coming
Thank
out.
you.
All right, then, Bridget. Have a good
You have a
evening and a
good
great.
night.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.